Welcome back, everyone. For today's video, we are going to be taking a look at my first game in the third round match of the FIDE World Cup being held here in Baku, Azerbaijan. Now, I won a very tough match against Karthik Venkataraman yesterday, but today I'm right back to the grind, and I start with the black pieces against GM Gledura, a strong grandmaster from Hungary. Now, I have played Benjamin before. I did beat him in Gibraltar a few years back, and I do remember the previous year, prior to me winning my game against him, he had a sensational victory over the five-time world chess champion Vishwanathan Anand. So he's someone that I am pretty familiar with, and away we go. All right, so as I said, I'm starting with a black piece in this two-game match, and the game starts with d4. I play knight to f6, and he plays the move c4. Here I play the move e6, and now he plays g3, and I decide to play c5, going for the classic Benoni. Now, anybody who is familiar with the Benoni opening probably knows that in Hebrew, the opening means the son of sorrow. So it's a very sad opening, and the name is very fitting because generally it's a very double-edged pawn structure. Now, what do I mean by the Benoni? The game continues with d5, I play d6, knight c3, and now I take on d5. And this is what is known as the Benoni structure. White can either play e4 or not play it at all. Either way, when black gets pawns on d6 and c5, white plays d4, c4, and d5. This is the classic structure. So I play the Benoni, which of course is not considered to be all that great. It also speaks a lot to the way that I'm approaching this event, which is I'm here to play chess, play the style of chess that I want to play. It's not about trying to be super solid, draw every game, or anything like that, which of course is a very valid strategy, but that's not the way that I'm playing this. I'm treating this event very much like a normal tournament, where I just want to try to play exciting games with both colors. So after cd5, I play g6 here, trying to fianchetto the bishop to g7. We get bishop g2, bishop g7, knight to f3, castles, castles, and I play rook to e8, and here Benjamin plays bishop f4. Now, up to this point, Benjamin is playing every move instantly. Now, this is a big surprise to me because I have not played the Benoni very many times. I played it maybe 3 or 4 times. I played against Wang Hao in the final round of Vaikanze in 2011, the year that I won that event. I think I played it also in the final round of the United States Chess Championship all the way back, and I want to say 2006 against Alexander Onishuk, but it's not something that I've played many times. I've played it very, very sparingly over the years, yet my opponent seems perfectly prepared, which is not a good sign. So after bishop to f4, I decide to play a6 here, trying to push b5 down the road. Benjamin responds with a4, and now I spent a bit of time before playing this move, knight to h5. Now, the main move here is knight to e4, but again, Benjamin was playing very, very quickly, and I decided at the board to make an audible where I changed up everything on the fly, and I played this move, knight h5. Now, this is not a great move, but the reason that I played it is twofold. First of all, in the Benoni structure, the computer always thinks white is better, and we do know white is better in these positions, but white has to be very, very accurate to prove the advantage. And if you're not super accurate, black can get a lot of counterplay. So when I play knight h5, first of all, I'm thinking, well, it doesn't matter. Knight h5, knight e4, whatever. I'm a little bit worse. But when I play knight h5, now Benjamin is out of his preparation. And to me, it's more important to get him out of his preparation than play something which is theoretically correct. So I play knight to h5. He plays bishop g5. I go queen c7. Plays e4, and now I play this move knight to d7, developing the knight. I'd love to go knight e5 down the road, but most of the play in this position is going to revolve around pawns pushed in the center. White can maybe try to go f4, e5, or if black can get rook to b8 and b5, black wants to play on the b file towards this knight on c3 and this pawn on b2. So Benjamin plays queen c2. I play rook b8, preparing to play b5, and now he plays a5. So when I play b5, white has the classic end peasant with a takes b6. Now, for those of you guys who are new to chess, you're probably like, this looks like a glitch. It's not a legal move. A takes b6 is legal. If white could not play en passant in this position, black would actually be quite a bit better. But unfortunately, a couple hundred years ago, they changed the rules of chess. The devs added this weird capture, and for that reason, I'm not actually better in the position. So after white takes, I take back with the queen here, trying to pressure the pawn on b2 and use this very long diagonal for my bishop. Benjamin plays bishop c1 to defend the pawn on b2. Now, this move caught me by surprise here. I thought that Benjamin was either going to play rook to a2, guarding the pawn and keeping an eye on the pawn on a6, or playing rook a b1. When he went bishop c1, I was very confused because to me it seems like it's a retreating move. The bishop is suddenly passive. It's not on either g5 or f4, so the bishop isn't doing anything besides guarding the pawn, and now I felt like I should be a little bit better. So here I took a bit of time before playing queen b3. Now, the move that I was also considering was knight to e5 here, but after knight to d2, I wasn't sure how to proceed. Now, the computer actually thinks that after f4, after f5, f4, for example, knight to g4, knight z4. Apparently, I'm better with bishop to d4, king to h1, and then this move queen to c7, which I simply did not even consider because I have a classic wooden shield here in the middle of the board. And I guess white can never play h3 because then there's knight takes g3, which would be checkmate with these knights. So probably in this position, black is better, but it's very, very hard to judge, and I wasn't sure what was going on. And for that reason, I did not play knight e5. Instead, I played this move queen to b3. Now, queen b3 is a move that I played based on the principles of the Benoni structure. When you play the Benoni from the black side, generally you try to put pressure on this knight on c3, pawn on b2, using this open b file. Additionally, if white is never able to play f4, e5, or get a knight to c4, generally black should be doing fine. And the final point is that in this structure, if I can trade off the queens, I should always be completely fine, because even though white has more space, the heavy pieces, the queens here, would be off the board. And now there's a lot of pressure. Even after knight d2, rook b4, there's no knight c4 to pressure the pawn on d6. There's pressure towards the pawn on e4 here. And additionally, this diagonal remains open. And maybe I have ideas like knight e5 and knight d3 to jump with the knight as well. So from a general fundamental standpoint here, I want to trade the queens, and if I can, I should be better. Now, it's interesting that the computer actually thinks that white is better if white trades, but of course, that is a computer. That is not a human. So Benjamin plays queen d3 like a human, and now I get to play knight e5, which is a great move, because what happens here is even though white has more space, I'm trading off these knights. Now, when the knights come off, I get another classic wooden shield here in the middle of the board, but additionally, now I can bring the bishop into the game, and the bishop is good on e5. I have ideas like knight to f6 to pressure e4, f5 to pressure e4, or maybe even bishop d7 and bishop b5 down the road. So at this point, I was feeling pretty good about my chances, especially because there's no obvious way for white to trade off pieces and simplify into a drawn endgame. So Benjamin plays rook a3. I go queen b7 here. Now, this is a move that I played after a bit of a think. Probably I should have played this move right away rather than using 4 minutes here, because I spent some time thinking about queen b4, but after rook a4, queen b3, probably the game will end in a draw, which is why I spent that time calculating instead of just playing queen b7 right away. But I decided that at the end of the day, I should play on. So I go queen b7, we get h3 being played here, and now in this position, I play the move f5, trying to strike at the center. This is a very thematic move here, because as I mentioned with the Benoni, what white would love to do, if I just illustrate the point with like rook a8, f4, bishop g7, is at some point if white can play e5 and d6 and open up this diagonal, white is doing very well. Additionally, if white can go like g4, knight f6, and maybe even e5 takes and f5 followed by g5, white gets a lot of play in this position. So white really needs to expand in the center of the board if at all possible with f4 and e5, or f4, g4, f5, e5, something with the central pawn mass, because that's where white's advantage is with more space. So after h3, I play f5 to try and prevent this, because now if white goes f4 in this position, I can play bishop to d4 check, and after king to h2, I can probably, I don't know if I should take or play knight f6, not sure which one's best. Computer likes knight f6 more. Probably I would have just taken, and after knight e4, bishop to f5. Once again, I think black is doing very well. The pawn on b2 is super weak. You can trade the bishop for the knight if you have to, and with this wooden shield here in the middle of the board, I think black just has a very, very nice advantage. I don't know if it's actually winning on the spot, but it's very difficult to play for white. So Benjamin instead takes the pawn on f5. I take back with the bishop, of course, to attack the queen and the pawn, and now he plays this move queen to c4, and here is where I spent a lot of time. I think I spent about 15 minutes before playing this move bishop d7. Now, this move is a fairly serious inaccuracy by me, because in this position, I could have given myself a great opportunity to try and win this game with a surprising move, queen to c8. Now, the reason that I did not really consider queen c8 is because at this point in time during the game, in my mind, I was looking for candidate moves, and the two moves that stood out to me were bishop to d7 or queen to d7. So the problem here is that I started out by looking at bishop to d7, and I realized that after queen takes a6, takes, bishop c3, takes, bishop b5, there's this line which is a forced draw with rook takes pawn, bishop takes rook, bishop takes bishop, rook to b1, white goes bishop g5, I play rook e1, try and stack the rooks and win the bishop. And here, there are a couple ways for white to draw, but probably the simplest illustration is king g2. And after rook takes f1, white can play rook to d8 check, king to f7, rook to d7, king cannot go forward, bishop covers this one, pawn covers this one, and after king e8, white simply just checks forever. Doesn't matter where the king goes, I just keep checking on these two squares, and the game will end in a draw. So in my mind, I spent probably 2 to 3 minutes calculating this line, making sure there was nothing that I was missing, and that it's a draw. And then I decided, okay, well now I'm going to look at queen to d7, which is the other move that was in my process of the candidate moves. Now the problem with queen d7 is it's a very interesting move, but white can play g4 here, forking the bishop and the knight. And now after rook to b4, white has queen takes a6. Now, one person who used to play this opening a lot, the Benoni structure, in many, many games, was a famous magician from Riga, Michael Tal, the former world chess champion. Now, Tal was very well known for sacrificing pieces all over the board. And I was thinking about this during the game, actually, as I was calculating the line. Like, do I want to play like Michael Tal, the former world champion, or not? Now, the problem with doing this is that it is a match situation. So as I spent more and more time calculating, I couldn't quite work out how exactly to play this. Because in this position, after queen takes g4, white can go queen c6, attacking the rook on e8. And after I move the rook to f8, white can play rook to a8, forcing off the rook here, and I simply don't really have a way to checkmate the white king. It looks really, really scary after, say, a move like queen h4, but just to illustrate the point, after takes, white can play a quiet-looking move like rook to e1, and after queen h2, king f1, there simply is no checkmate. The g3 square is covered. If I go knight f4, white can take with the bishop, and the king is snug as a bug in a rug, as the saying goes. So when I don't see the mate here, if there's no mate, I'm simply going to end up down a bishop in this position and probably lose the game and lose the match. So I spent a lot of time looking at this line, trying to make it work. Another line that I looked at was rook takes g4, with the idea that if white plays queen c6 here, I can sack the rook. And after king g2, queen g4, king h1, queen h3, king g1, there's queen h2, which is a classic checkmate with a double A battery. So I was looking at this, trying to make it work, but the problem is if I play rook to g4, white can now go knight to e2, and the rook on a3 is magically perfectly placed to cover to defend against any threats on the king side. So for example, after takes queen g4, if white plays knight to g3 here, after takes bishop d4, and there's a reason I'm showing this line, white can go rook a to f3, and the queen covers the e2 square, white has an extra rook, and white wins the game, and most likely the match. So I spent all my time looking at these two moves, and then I forgot that there is a slight difference, which is here I can play the move queen to c8, which is very similar to queen to d7, except with one very slight difference. If I play queen to c8 here and white goes g4, forking the bishop and the knight, I can play rook to b4, and if white plays queen takes a6, I can trade the queens and play bishop to d3, attacking both of these rooks at the same time, and probably winning the game. And the reason this is so critical is because after rook to b4, if white plays a move like queen to e2, now there are many ways to win, but one sample line is something like bishop, actually not bishop a2, bishop takes c3, capturing the knight and creating the classic fossil. And if white plays queen to a2, which is the other way to save the queen, now the sacrifice works. So after takes in this position, I can play queen takes g4 here. And now with the queen unable to go to a6, the queen being super passive, it is effectively winning. Actually, rook takes g4 is probably better. After rook takes g4, the line goes as follows. Knight to e2. I sack the rook for the bishop. And after king takes g2, queen to g4, white plays knight g3 again. I trade the knights, and I go bishop to d4. And this is actually winning because the queen is on a2 here versus a6. So if white tries to play rook a to f3, the queen is no longer on a6 covering the e2 square. So now I can go rook to e2. If white plays king h1, there's queen h3, which is checkmate. And if white blocks with the rook, I can simply, there are probably a couple ways to win, but probably simplest to take with the, not take with the bishop. I guess I have to take with the rook and then play queen to e4. If I were to take with the bishop, I guess after queen takes a6, I'm losing. So it's not as easy as it looks, but after rook takes and queen to e4, if white goes rook f3, there's queen to e2, which wins the game. And if white plays, say, king to f1, which is probably the last try, there's queen h1, king to e2, and now I can go queen takes c1 with the idea of queen to e3 or queen c2. And the white king is super open here in the middle of the board, and it should be winning. So it's a very, very long line. It's very, very dank. It's probably something that I should have spotted, but as I said, when I was going through the process in my head here, in this position, I could sort of sense there's probably something that's good for me, but my ordering in terms of how I calculated the lines was slightly wrong. I looked at bishop d7, then I looked at queen d7, and I just decided, okay, well, I know bishop d7 is at least equal. Queen d7 doesn't work, so then I might as well just play bishop d7 without spending more time to calculate queen c8. Now, again, it was very critical because at this time I was up 20 minutes, so I spent my time correctly here, but unfortunately, I did not look at this queen to c8 move in depth, and without this move, unfortunately, there are very limited chances. So I played bishop to d7 here. And now Benjamin played rook d1, which shocked me because I was sure here with 31 minutes on the clock that he would just trade everything and go into the line that I showed you before, and the game would end in a draw. But instead, he plays rook to d1, which really confused me because at this point, I figured if anyone is better here, it has to be black because of the classic wooden shield, the weakness on the b file, ideas like bishop b5, and the bishop on g2 is actually very passive as well. It doesn't have any active diagonals. So I assumed if anyone is better here, it's black. And so I was really confused when Benjamin played rook to d1 because it's not the move that I was expecting. Nonetheless, it is still relatively okay for white. So after rook to d1, I play the move queen to c8, attacking the pawn on h3. Benjamin takes on a6 now, because in this position, if I trade the queens, the rook is no longer on f1, so after takes bishop b5, white can take the pawn since the rook is no longer hanging. So after queen takes a6, I play bishop takes h3, and now Benjamin finds knight to e4, which is an excellent move, putting the knight in the center of the board, pressuring the pawns on d6 and c5, and now I have to start simplifying and trading off material, much to my dismay. So I trade the bishops on g2, he takes on c8, I take, he takes, and now I play knight to f6, because if I don't eliminate this knight on e4, down the road, white is going to have some very nasty threats. One example is, let's just say I were to take on b2 here. After takes, and knight d6, rook to f8, for example, white can play knight to e4, and now you have a pass pawn with the rook behind the pawn, in fact. So this d pawn is very fast, and I think that white might even be close to winning here. So if I don't get rid of this knight right away, this knight is going to become a serious problem. So I play knight to f6 to trade the knights off. He takes, and now he finds rook to a6, which is the absolute best move here. At this point, I still thought maybe there was a glimmer of hope that I could swindle him and create chance in an endgame, but Benjamin does play rook a6, and now I have to take on b2. Because if I go bishop to e7, which is maybe, bishop e7 maybe is okay, but after rook to e1, bishop to f8, rook e2, if anyone is better here, I assume it's white, because white can put the bishop on f4 and pressure this pawn on d6. And I don't really have any pressure towards the pawn on b2. So if anyone's better here, it's white. And in this situation, why do I want to go into that? Why do I want to be worse in an endgame against a very strong player? For no reason. So I take the pawn on b2, Benjamin takes on d6, I trade the bishops on c1, and now I play rook b2. Now, it's very critical here that I don't get careless and play a move like c4, because on first glance, c4 looks like an easy draw. Something like rook e6, c3, rook e3, rook b5, trade off the rooks, take the pawn, easy peasy, lemon squeezy, and it's a draw. But if I play c4 here, there's this tricky move rook to c6, because now if I trade the rooks, suddenly I'm losing the game with white having a rook behind the passed pawn. If I go rook b4, c7 wins the game, and if I go rook c8, rook c4, king f3, white can run the king up the king side, and white will win this game. So I have to be a little bit careful here. But I did spot this right away, actually, when I played bishop takes b2, this whole line with rook to b2, a very active move, creating the classic kebab on the 7th rank. And now rook c3 is played here by Gledura. If he were to play rook c6, I have this nice move, rook to f8. And one sample line, which leads to a draw, is rook takes c5, rook f2, king to h3. And now I can play this move h5, threatening checkmate in 1, because the king has no square. If white takes on g6, king h7 wins on the spot, because rook h2 mate still exists. And white will lose the rook on g6. And if white goes king h4, I can go king to, I don't know which square is better, let's just say g7, for example. And now, probably white doesn't have any way. I guess d6 probably draws the game, but d6, king h6 starts to look kind of scary with ideas like rook h2. I think even beyond that, I can play rook b4 check with the idea king g5 and rook g4 mate. And if king h3, rook b2 is also simply a draw. So, I saw this line, and Benjamin, I think, realized that, so he plays rook c3 instead. And now I played rook to d2, and here I offer a draw. I did not go rook to f8 in this position, because here white can play rook to f3, stopping the threats towards the pawn. And if I actually trade the rooks here, I don't know if white is winning, but it's getting kind of scary, because white can go after the c pawn, and white's king is very close to protecting this passed d pawn, which can go down the board very quickly. So why do I want to do that? So instead I play rook d2, I offer a draw, and here Benjamin accepts in view of the fact that I have a very active classic right triangle rook on d2. If white were to play a move like, let's just say, rook to d7, now I can go rook to f8, because after rook to f3, there are probably multiple ways to draw, but simplest is to play h5. And after we trade, I'm going to be able to push the c pawn down the board, and eventually we get some position like king f3, c4. If white goes king e4, I think c3, rook c7, c2 is good enough to draw. So probably we get rook c7, takes, and rook and 2 versus rook and 2. Nothing to play for either side. So, and if white goes king f3, which is a one last try, now I can go rook f8, king to e3. I can take the pawn on f2. And after rook c5, rook g2, it's probably still a draw, But I think that with the 2 connected pass pawns going up the board, probably if anybody's going to get chances, it's black. So for that reason, Benjamin simply did not want to play on, and he took the draw offer, and we draw this first game of the 3rd round match. So overall, I'm pretty happy with my play. A little bit disappointed that I didn't see this queen c8 move, because I think there are very, very good chances that I would have won this game. Nonetheless, that was really the only opportunity that I had. It was literally one move where I had a chance to potentially win the game. And I felt like I played pretty well. It was a very dynamic game. I played the Benoni, which is not an opening I normally play. And so overall, I felt pretty good. Perhaps a little bit disappointed that it was a draw, but nonetheless, it's not the end of the world, as it's the first game of the match. And tomorrow, I will play the second game against Benjamin with the white pieces. Now, if I win tomorrow, I win the match. If I lose, I'm eliminated, of course. And if it is a draw, we will go to tiebreak. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this recap. I will, of course, be back tomorrow with a recap after the second game that I play against Benjamin. But I hope you guys are enjoying it. Make sure to hit that subscribe button below if you haven't already. And we'll be back tomorrow with another recap here on YouTube. Hope you guys have a great rest of your weekend. See you. Bye.